Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is a special edition of what I'm going to be calling the Mark Levitt Show because Mark has been invited back by the people who are running the POK community to have a slot every month on one of the core sessions. So it's going to be a regular thing. We've had two core sessions already, and then the response was so good and so positive and so enthusiastic that Patty and David and the team of people. Tanja's on that team, Amy's on that team. I don't know who else. The steering committee. So they invited Mark back every month. So it's going to be good. And I'm assuming people are familiar with Mark, but if they're not, Mark has written a trilogy, Enlightenment trilogy. The third one I found out from Peter is done. There's just a little waiting for the graphics to be completed, and then it'll be available on Amazon. The first one is called Enlightenment Behind the Scenes. Great little book. And then the second one is called Being While Knowing That You Are Not. And the third one is going to be available soon. So that being said, oh, by the way, and another great author is Hannah Burr. I've got her Whatever Works book. That's a charming book. I was looking for it before, but it's upstairs on near my bedstand because I pray every night to Whatever Works, and it's working. It's working. Hannah, over to you, and you can set the stage for this particular special session. Go ahead.
All right. Well, we have two special guests. One is Mark, and one is Petey, who I'm dog sitting here, and he's very shy, but he's decided to get up on my lap. Mark had a second meetup, and in the middle of that meetup, he was talking about what it was. Petey's looking at himself in the mirror. What it was that basically a practice-oriented meetup. What it was that has worked for Mark. And Mark, if I'm getting this wrong, please let me know. What has worked as just a general kind of attitude and practice for waking up and clearing up. And one of the things that came up was not defending yourself. And it just was sort of a rich vein. And Mark got in touch with a few of us to try to set up another conversation about it. And I was very enthusiastic because it was so helpful. And so here we are, and we haven't done any like preparation really, because these things tend to flow, and Gary and Mark and I are very chatty people too. But Mark, would you like to just kind of talk about what inspired you to want to have a further conversation?
Yeah, I would. Thank you, Van. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, sure.
In the last talk, I think I mentioned that as I'm writing these things and talking about these things, I'm realizing how many things I've just forgotten, how many things that are so important and so integral have just become so close, you actually forget them for the things you're actually reminding yourselves about. So I mentioned that last time, how all this has brought up things about how that basically I look at the spiritual path as a suicide mission. The whole thing is about intentionally trying to, what it feels like is to kill yourself, because you're denying yourself all the fighting, struggling, thinking, and building and creating. So it feels like suicide. So I refer to it as the suicide mission because that's what the experience feels like. But as we talked, the subject of defending yourself came up, and it just came up casually. It came up spontaneously, but it just reminded me at one point, that was the only practice in my life. That was the most important. It was such a foundation. Like I said, it's easy to forget about it because you think about the things that you're working on, think about the things that are new. So after I thought about that, my brain was just spinning with, other thoughts I'd like to follow up with. But the main thing was I wanted to tap on was just what Hannah said, was that we're hitting the main nerve when you're talking about not defending yourself. And I didn't just want to let that go as an aside, because I didn't even bring that up. Or maybe I did bring that up in passing spontaneously to someone's question, but it reminded me that the most important practice at some point in my life was to not defending yourself. And not defending yourself still falls under the category of not building yourself, not creating yourself. It's really under that same category as I was talking about, like the stick man. Anytime that you're telling yourself a story about who you are, anytime you're defending something, even trying to create something, that's still part of the same family as trying to build yourself. But defending yourself is the main thing. So I really wanted to leave it up to a lot of questions and everything today, because I think that is a lot more rewarding for everybody. But before I go into that and go into questions, I did just want to say the things that were mostly on my mind after the last talk about not defending yourself. So where I like to begin is kind of where I began before, where this all starts with you just making a commitment to yourself, a decision to yourself. What do you want out of life? And if your decision is that you want peace, or whatever word you decide on, and we'll take peace. I know that's a big word and a general word, but when I say peace, I don't mean always walking around feeling happy. I mean peace, like there's such a strong foundation of peace that you could have sadness, madness, anger, whatever, and you're just not attached to clinging to it or avoiding it. Just a real authentic place where you're completely free. You're not trying to build yourself. You're not trying to create yourself. That's what I mean by peace. So once you establish that you've really committed to yourself, and this is a conversation you have in private with yourself. Once you make that commitment, say, I really do want peace over anything else, then everything else becomes super, super easy, because all you have to do is remind yourself that, because when you go out into the world, you're going to find that now it is your job to always be the adult in the room, because no one else is going by your agenda. No one else is trying to accomplish the same thing as you are. You want peace. Everybody else wants more. Everybody else wants to be on top. They all have a different agenda. So the reason I say it feels like a suicide mission, not just in meditation, but also out in real life, is because it feels like a suicide mission, because you always have to be the adult in the room. You're always having to be the one bending or giving, or else you're going to be just like them, fighting for your stature, your position, or whatever. Oh, another thing too is that you have to. So two things: you have to be comfortable with always being the adult in the room, always knowing that you're going to have to be the one that bends and helps, and always making things are moving along, things are always advancing. And then the second thing is you're going to have to learn how to be comfortable with what I call hunger pains. I do something called intermittent fasting, where you only eat for like a 6-8 hour window out of the day. And when I don't do that, I feel hunger pains all the time, and it's uncomfortable. But ironically, when you're doing the intermittent fasting, you're used to hunger, but that same chemical is not interpreted as an unpleasant feeling. It actually feels like a high. So the same thing when you go out in life and you're always bending and you're always bending and letting other people have the way, it's going to feel like a hunger pain. It's going to feel like you're not getting something that you're used to getting. And that goes back to what Hannah was talking about, how little tiny things in your head. You could be having a conversation with somebody and it just ends with something trivial to where you just know they didn't understand your point. And it's not really important, but for some reason you just want to have it. You just want to have it out there so you're understood. Little tiny things like that, you just realize they're just a waste of time. They're just vaporous. It's really just me building myself. They're not going to care. I'm not going to care. It's not going to amount to anything. This is just me coming back to building myself. So again, I do want to go back into the building yourself and defending yourself a lot more, because like I said, this is something we could spend hours on, but I find it much more rewarding when I hear from you guys. So based on what I just said, I'll open it up to just general questions, unless Hannah has something specific that she wants to follow on.
No, I don't think so. Except to say that in the last conversation, there were some specific examples of not defending ourselves that, like, one came up strongly for me of like, oh, that's a situation where there is an impulse to defend. And I found it very helpful to hear other people's examples. So questions, or, if someone has an example that feels, that's kind of bubbling up for them, those two things would interest me. How does that sound, Mark?
Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody wants me to either clarify something I just said, or you have a specific example, that's really where the rubber meets the road. If you have a specific example of a situation that is hard for you to not defend yourself or to surrender to, we could take up a specific example, or if you just have a general question about anything specific I talked about. Oh, I see Richard. Go ahead, Richard. Do I have to hit any buttons, or is it good enough to just say Richard's name? There you go. All right.
Yeah. So what's coming up here is just there's like a specific repetitive kind of thing, but basically what I'm looking to see is, so I can see like the situation happening. It's with one of my housemates, and I can see the conditioning of the like going to war, or the just like the stuff rising to like, you know, like wants to do its thing to defend or justify, or you're not seeing my point, this is the point, you know, that kind of energy. So, I mean, it's one thing to say, don't defend yourself, but I'm just curious about what kind of, and I do have experience with intermittent fasting too, so that's cool. You sort of wove that in, but just to see what kind of practice, or how did you go about dealing with that without defending yourself, or sitting with it, or that's sort of where the curiosity is here.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. And again, that's why I like these questions, because you just bring up a better point, a bigger point. We're always getting back to bigger points with the more questions you ask. It has to come from not a thing to where you hear it from me and it sounds like a good idea. It really has to come from your very center, to where you see it yourself in life, where you have examples to where you just see it's not a decision to not do it. You just spontaneously see the pointlessness in it. It's something about you just really watching life and watching everything and just seeing it's just pointless. It's just a waste of energy. Again, it's not a pious decision. It's not a decision for you to try to make yourself better or stronger or to follow a particular path. It has to come from a spontaneous recognition that it just does not matter. For your goals are to have peace. You made that decision. You made that commitment. That's what you're about. You're not about everybody knowing about who Richard is. You're not about, everybody knowing Richard's wisdom. You're not about anything except for Richard finding peace. That's your agenda. Other people got their agenda, but if you really got your agenda, you're really just going to spontaneously see it's just a waste of time. I'm not going to get my way. They're not going to understand it. It's just not going to happen. I understand the impulse, but it's just not going to get me what I want. That's the thing. Most of the things in life you're going to find, they're not going to satisfy you. All the things that we're fighting for and we're struggling for, you're going to naturally find they just don't satisfy you. They don't have any longevity. They don't have any meaningful satisfaction. The only thing that you're truly going to find satisfying is this surrendering, this giving up that I'm talking about. You're not going to find it out there. You're not going to be able to organize the world in such a way. You're not going to be able to have everybody seeing you in such a way. You're not going to be able to see everybody in such a way. It's going to be this chaos. What we see is what we guess. It's going to be my perspective, my point of views. You're going out with your point of views. And then everybody that wants to try to share their point of views, that's what's going on in the world. And everybody's trying to say, I got the better point of view. Listen to mine. I got the better point. And that's all that's going on. And that's why I talked about last time. I think the only point of view is like in war games, and you realize no point of view, even my point of view. I don't even believe in my point of view. I let that go. I don't even have, that's not true. I do have a point of view, but I don't even take that seriously. I see my point of view as just something that spontaneously arises, and it's here for me now, and it'll be replaced by a different point of view. But I don't have any attachment to this point of view. And I don't think my point of view is any more important or any better than anybody's. I think it's unique for me and it has a unique purpose. But for what we're talking about something very specific, which is surrendering and not defending yourself. So to go back to your question, it has to come from a spontaneous recognition that it's pointless. It's just not going to do you any good. You have to just see that it's just your hopes for what you think it's going to get you. It's not going to get you. And thank you, Richard. I see Lisa's hand up.
Yeah.
And Becky's. I'm sorry, Becky's on the left.
So there's Becky and then Lisa. And I just want to say one quick thing. What I heard you say is it's not a practice, which means it's not a subtle way to build the ego back up by being like, well, I'm not going to I'm just going to not say anything, you know, because I'm taking the higher ground, like that kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a spontaneous recognition. And once you recognize it, I'm losing fuel. I'm wasting energy. It's
Okay.
not a decision. It's not a practice. Exactly, Hannah. Thank you. That's the most important thing. None of these are practices. They're
Okay.
recognitions that you operate from having recognized it. Thank you, Hannah.
All right. So now Becky and then Lisa.
Thank you. And Mark, thanks for coming back and joining us. My question is about the intermittent fasting. I'm not familiar with it. So
okay, I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you about it. Basically, here's the cool thing about intermittent fasting. That hunger pain that we feel whenever we get hungry, it's actually just a chemical. I don't remember the name of the chemical, but the name of it. But it's actually a chemical that has a rise and a fall. So we think that when we get hungry, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. But if you've ever been forced to fast or something, you'll notice that hunger, that chemical that's making you feel unpleasant, it actually goes away and it comes and it goes away. But anyway, what I found was that chemical is natural. That's what makes us hunt. That's what, drives us to hunt. So it gives us energy. So basically that's the way we're meant to be. We're either meant to be hunting or gathering or basically doing our work all day, gathering our food or hunting our food, and then eating it and then resting and then working again to hunt your food over again. So what I found is when I started the intermittent fasting, it actually felt pleasurable. What we used to call hunger pain actually feels really good. So I work at a sleep lab. I don't eat until midnight, and I start to feel hungry like at 7 o'clock. But that feeling that I used to call hunger pain now translates into like almost an adrenaline rush that pushes me till midnight, and then I eat. But I also wanted to point out whenever I go off of the intermittent fasting, I feel constantly hungry 24 hours a day. I'm eating, and the food doesn't do me any good. I'm just feeling myself in a constant state of hunger. But with the intermittent fasting, I never feel hungry. I do feel that chemical that is the hunger pains, but it's not interpreted as a hunger pain. It's interpreted as adrenaline. Oh, and what intermittent fasting is by definition, is just limiting your meals to just a 6 or 8 hour, or you could start off as a 10 or 12-hour window to where you're eating. So just find your daily schedule, find out a time. You could start out 10 or 12 hours, but really I think it becomes effective at, let's say, 8 hours. So let's say you could eat from 12 in the afternoon to 8 at night, or if you're a morning person, 8 at night to 4 in the afternoon.
Okay. Thank you. This sounds really interesting.
You're welcome. Is there something else, or should I go to Lisa?
Okay, the connection between that and what you were talking about, not defending yourself.
The hunger pains, yes. To learning to live with that little bit of uncomfortableness. Maybe that's it. Okay. Maybe learning to be a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe that's it, because that's where we're growing, when you're uncomfortable, when you're expanding. So maybe that's the word I was looking for, learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Mark, thanks for coming here. This is always so fun to interact with you. Yeah, that last couple of sentences there was kind of exactly what I was going to speak about, because I have a direct experience of this, going to meetups, got a crowd of people that you kind of hang out with. This is how POK ends up shaking out. You would kind of end up with the same group of people at the same meetings. And at some point along the way, there was this idea that a couple of people had, that this individual here was like super supportive of and believed deeply in a certain spiritual teacher. And it would be kind of thrown out there, well, we know that Lisa likes so-and-so. And I can remember maybe once trying to like explain and defend myself on that point. And of course, that never feels good. Based on exactly what you're talking about, exactly. Trying to defend yourself, trying to back yourself up, trying to make yourself understood, trying to get people to believe you. It just always lands so friggin' flat. And so, and I of course noticed that, but later on, of course, still the ribbing and the poking fun at me and trying to trigger me by saying, oh, we know Lisa likes blah, 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 or she's going to say this next, which is like some iteration of this teacher or whatever the hell it is. And I can remember that starting to come up and just being able to lean back and just have this little inner laugh. Like once you're used to the fasting, you get a high off of it. You don't care anymore what anybody says or how they act or feel or think, whether it's 100% right or 100% wrong. You're done with it. And you get a high off of that, out of being grounded in whatever it is that you know is really going on. You have the truth at the center. What the heck does it matter what anybody else says or how they want to make fun or joke or laugh or whatever? And it's all in lightheartedness. There's very little mean-spiritedness in our community, although occasionally it rises a little bit. But so there, it was sort of a personal example, speaking directly to what you said, sort of a comment more than a question. I appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you. No, I'm glad that once again, you gave me an opportunity to bring up something I never would have remembered to mention. The high. You're absolutely right. There is actually a high you go through life. You take that attitude through life, you're going to feel that high 24 hours a day because you're going to have people around you throwing that at you 24 hours a day. And as you're not responding, as you're not saying things, as you're hearing things in your mind, I could say this, I could say that, and you're not, that is a high. That energy is replaced with the high. You're about to release that energy in the form of words, in the form of explanation, in the form of clarification. But by you not releasing that energy stays in you as a high. And you're right, that is the perfect word. When you're going through life, let's say through work or through your family, and you're always taking the bending road, you're always bending, you're never trying to get a certain way. You're always on the high. You're feeling that high. Just like I said with the hunger pains, how something that used to be bad is now interpreted as a good feeling. And around you, it's going to be noticed. When you do that, it's going to be noticed around you. And you get more, I don't want to say, what's the word, validation, but more encouragement. You get more encouragement because the more it works, the more you're encouraged to do it. And then the more you get that positive feedback from that high, you just get encouraged to do it. And you find it's a different way of living. So every interaction you have at work or whatever, you are now that person to where you're just always the one that's never in the drama. That's never, a part of any of that. And like I said, that is a high that you get from that feeling of grounding that energy. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's something once again, one of these tons of things that you experience, but you don't think about until it comes from somebody else. So thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely.
And now we have Allie.
Oh, Allie. Hi, Allie.
Hey, Mark. I'm really enjoying the books. And I think Donna has her hand up after mine too. I thought I saw her like human hand up. Just so you know, I've noticed this with my kids. My kids are now actually all in their 20s, but they have, over the years, I realized whenever they were telling me, you're being unfair, or you did this to me and it made me feel bad or whatever, I would defend myself. And then after a while, I stopped defending myself. And it's kind of amazing how much better our relationships have gotten and how much easier things have gotten. They feel like they're heard. They don't feel like I'm stepping on them saying, and they come up with some of the stuff that I have no memory of me doing, saying something unfriendly or, unsupportive to them. And I have no memory of doing it at all. But I'm just like, wow, I'm really sorry that that came out like that. And, I basically apologize. And it just seems like it's very, because no matter what, they've been hurt. If they've been hurt by something that, even if they just have a memory of it, and I don't have the memory at all of it, I want them to know that, if that can be healed at all. At the same time, it's just not, there's not the feeling of needing to be a good mother anymore, I think, and not having, when they say, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that, or, you're wrong or whatever, it's kind of nice to say, sorry, actually.
Yes.
And they seem to really like it. Our relationships have seemingly improved, and, they seem happier with me. And if I do something, they're much more likely to bring it up right away. Like, what you did just really hurt my feelings or whatever. And I think that's been great. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think this is, the closer the relationship with defending yourself, the closer the relationship that you can drop the defending, the better your relationships will eventually become too.
Yeah. And you're actually going to make the people better too. One thing that I wrote down that I didn't say, but you just reminded me, so I will say it, is that what I found is that in interactions, there's only room enough for one ego. That's the whole thing. That's why interhuman interactions don't go so well, because really there's only room enough for one ego. So if you don't bring your ego into it, then like you said, your relationships will flourish. The people will flourish. Your children will flourish. The people at your work will flourish. That's what I mean by saying you have to be the adult in the room, because they're not going to be. They're on a different agenda. You're on a unique agenda that nobody else is on, and they shouldn't be on. Everybody is on their proper path, and you found yours. You're in this unique spot. So you're in the rare 1%. You're going to have to go through life being the weirdo, and you're going to have to go through life knowing you're living in their world. That's the thing, is you're living in their world. So the thing about there only being room enough for one ego in any interaction, that's powerful, because you're going to make everybody better around you, because then they don't have to have their ego. They don't have to have that person that they're trying to top, that they're trying to be on top of, that they're trying to, show their worthiness and show their, their power or whatever that is. They don't have to. If you show people that you're not there as an ego in the first place, it puts them at ease, and they're docile as kittens. People are the most easiest people to get around with. Just know there's only room enough for one ego in the room. And if you don't bring yours, theirs will dissolve, because they don't have to have it. They only have to have it because they think they need it. If you show them that they don't need it and you come in like that, they don't have to have it. People are docile little kittens that just want to open up. So what was the other thing you said? Two things. We're always going to make mistakes. That's the whole thing, is there's no such thing as not making a mistake. I made the comparison last time to like how much beer is the appropriate amount of beer to drink. It's one less than your doctor. So whoever you're talking to, they're going to be giving you their mistakes by their standards. There's no such thing as mistakes. You're going to find, there's no one in the end that say this was the right way. Everybody thinks they're doing it the right way. And as parents, that's what we're doing, is making mistakes. Your mistakes are creating your child. Your kid's going to make her mistakes. And that's what parenting is. There's no way around that. And the other thing too, I wanted to mention that you mentioned was sorry being a high. I don't go 2 paragraphs without saying I'm sorry. I'm constantly saying I'm sorry. One, because it feels good and it advances the conversation. It moves things along. It's all about energy. Just, I'm sorry, you're right, and we're just moving the energy along. So you're right. There's an incredible high that comes from those words, I'm sorry. So go ahead, Tancha. I see your hand up.
Actually, we have Donna and then Tancha.
Okay, Donna.
I just wanted to interject for a minute too.
Yes.
The part about needing to be a good blank, a good mother, I noticed that is, that's one of those conditions that's kind of fun to dissect. And I just also wanted to say the stuff about high and how good it feels. In my own experience, I feel like and I don't know if this relates to what you're talking about directly, Mark, but it relates to, when it isn't feeling good, that's where that thing can be unraveled. And, with Byron Katie work or whatever, just something can be examined because it's coming up to be examined. And so it doesn't always necessarily feel good to realize, well, oh, I don't have that neutrality, but that's like the richness. Okay. And so Donna, then Tancha.
Yeah. And before we move on, I think what you're saying there is what I touched on earlier about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because you're right. It is going to be painful. You're going to be going to areas where I'm comfortable. And that's the expansion. That's you growing. That uncomfort is you going into areas you haven't been in. So that's all I wanted to add to that. Go ahead. Whoever's next.
Donna.
Hi, this has been wonderful. I used to be a huge justifier, explainer, defender, wanting to be understood and acknowledged. And a lot of years ago, I realized how much energy was going into that and how it might be helpful to let that drop. And so I intentionally practiced what you're talking about. So maybe it's not a practice, but just like not defending myself. And it's true, there's so much more energy and more clarity. But I found, I'm retired now, but when I was working and I was doing that and it felt lovely, and although sometimes uncomfortable, there were times, and I can remember like one time in particular, I told a joke to someone and I saw her kind of shake her head a little. She didn't exactly laugh. She shook her head a little, and I thought, did she not think it was funny, or did she not understand it, or whatever? And it was a joke on me about one of our other workers there. I was the boss. That's the other thing. I'm the boss of this place. So that's just one example. And then later that I realized that created misunderstanding because there was this lack of clarity. And before that, maybe I would have said, oh, that was a joke and da-da-da, but I didn't hear. So what I came to from that, I don't know if that would happen now because I'm a more clear person and maybe that wouldn't happen. But what I came to there was that I think I can tell the difference between I'm building or defending or explaining myself versus, oh, there might be a lack of clarity here, perhaps with this other way of being or this other energy I'm going to explain. And that's what I kind of tried to practice after that in the work setting. So I guess I'm saying sometimes if that differentiation can be there, if I can tell, okay, this is not to build up myself or to defend myself, but really because perhaps more clarity is needed, that sometimes it's not a good idea to have misunderstandings in a work setting in particular. I guess that was what I wanted to throw out and get your thoughts on.
Thank you, Donna. Absolutely. And I don't know if you're there at the last talk I had, but
yes.
Okay, that's why I started before I ever say anything. It's always to not be attached to any rules or to take anything as a rule, because life is spontaneous. You know, life is evolving, and there is no one, at least not that I found, there's no one thing that I could say, except for just sit down and shut up. That's about the only thing that I found is always good, is just shut up. But besides that, there's no truism. There's no, wise philosophy that you could just, pin to or tattoo on your hand and just follow for the rest of your life. So yeah, if you follow something blindly, like it's just an idea, like you heard from somebody, then yeah, absolutely, you're right. You're going to go through your life just being a martyr, just doing it for the sake of, because you heard it as instructions and it sounds like the right thing to do. But instead, it should come from your heart, from a recognition that you realize it's just a waste of time. So to your point, sometimes it's not a waste of time. Sometimes it is important. And that's just life. You just noticing those times that it's important. And who knows, maybe you'll reach another point in your life where you think, oh, all those times I thought was important, actually, they're not important either. So I'm going deeper. But it doesn't matter. You're always doing the work. So to answer your point, yes, absolutely. This is meant to come from a reason of a recognition. And the recognition is that most of the times things are not worth it. But as you pointed out, sometimes they are. And you just know this is the time, that you're doing it. And you work those things out, you know what I mean? In time, you're going to start to notice the difference between something that is you just doing it for the sake of you, and that's something that actually has a practical thing that, there's going to be a future to it. So again, just take it as the spirit of which it's intended, from just a spontaneous recognition that most of it is not important, but in life, some things are important. So there you go. And I hope that answered it. Okay. All right. And Tancha and Kelsey.
So I'm not sure this is appropriate, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway. It sounds like all of you are talking about pretty normal people, pretty normal interactions, like at work or with, quote, more normal family members. And my experience is that, you know, I'm on board with the no defensiveness. I love that. It's just so freeing, so completely and totally freeing. And yet I find myself in this situation where I am dealing with two addicts and alcoholics on a really extreme basis right now. You know, like many texts a day, many phone calls, crying, this or that. So what I've been doing is actually stepping out of the room. You know, at a certain point, after 29 years of doing this interaction, this engagement with these two, I am stepping out of the room. It has nothing to do with defensiveness. It has nothing to do with anything. And in a way, it has to do more with shedding identities and realizing that there's no one in control here, that there's nothing that this being can do anymore for these people. And so, you know, it's so wonderful to see that I no longer have to defend not being a good sister, not being a good aunt/mother, not needing to be the rescuer anymore. And I will say that, you know, if you guys kayak, it feels like I'm in a class 5 kayak, in a class 5 rapid right now. Thank goodness I know how to breathe. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, Tancha. Another thing that you made me realize, or maybe brought me back to is what I talked at the beginning, is just this commitment to yourself, to just remaining in peace. And like I said, I don't mean peace in a superficial way. So if you have a better word, use your own word, but something for truth. Okay, exactly. Yeah. So grounded in your truth that you're making a commitment to be grounded in your truth, and the recognition that other people are not. They got their own agendas. So your whole thing is just always staying in your movie, staying in your game, and not being pulled into others. They're going to have their thing. All the addicts, all the people you talk to, they got their story. Everyone's trying to pull you into theirs. And for you, and this goes back to Donna's thing too, it's just about you staying with your agenda, the commitment that you've made to yourself. So going back to Donna's thing, if let's say the confrontation you're having or the controversy you're having somebody, if that's necessary to move your agenda to protect your peace, then yes, you're going to have a confrontation. If something's going to, you know, you're going to have to get into an uncomfortable spot. The whole thing, like I said, it just comes down to one, spontaneously recognizing what you want, and then committing to your agenda, and just always reminding yourself of what your agenda is, which is fine. You're not doing anything bad. You're trying to become a more truthful, peaceful person so you could be a better person for other people, so you could be in service for other people, so you could actually be a whole person for other people, so you don't have to be yet another combatant in their world. So you don't have to feel bad about what you're doing. You're actually helping people. So It starts way back at the beginning of just knowing what I want, truth or peace, making the commitment and staying with it. Other people are staying with their agendas, so you stay with yours.
It's also about radical acceptance, Mark. You know, total, complete, absolute radical acceptance. Radical acceptance to whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I wish I would have said that myself. Thank you, Tancha. Yeah. I wish I would have said that myself. Thank you.
Yeah, because the commitment to truth is really strong. I'm really centered in that.
Yeah. But radical, like you said, it's a radical, revolutionary change. Absolutely.
It absolutely is. And it's quite shockingly, brilliantly wonderful and horrible at the same time.
Beautiful. You know it. Yeah. If you say that, you know it. You hit it.
So before we just go to Kelsey, I just wanted to comment because I so resonate with what Tancha was sharing too, that in a way, you know, what I'm hearing is and there might not be a really strong feeling of fear for some people here. You know, there might not be any feeling of it, but what I'm noticing is it's like taking the slightly scarier option as part of the surrender, the one that will will kill off a part of who I think I am, you know, not letting it burn down or fall apart, or just letting the pieces be on the floor, you know, like, I mean, a simple example would be dropping a glass and having it shatter. I used to scramble and swear and be like, oh my God, and sort of just to allow that to be shards on the floor and kind of take in the difference. And that can look 1,000 different ways for 1,000 different people. That's what comes up here. And then if Mark wants to say something, and then Kelsey.
Well, real quick, I had something where I wrote down that I didn't bring up until you just brought it up. There's only two paths to this. There's the suicide mission, and then there's just suffering. So what I'm talking about is the suicide mission. What everybody else is on another path, the same path, it's just called suffering. But we're all being funneled or wedged into the same very narrow place. And it doesn't matter how you get there. Reality is teaching us. And it could teach you either through the everyday suffering of your life, or you could intentionally practice what I call the suicide mission. But we're all going the same direction. Your parents, your friends, the people you work with, we're all being funneled into your choices are being limited. You're finding out it doesn't work. It doesn't work. This doesn't work. Nothing works. Nothing works. And the funneling is that war games thing where I'm just saying the end thing at the very point of the funnel is there is nothing to do. There is nothing. Everything's fruitless. Every option is wrong. Everything's error. Everything you could do is going to be wrong from the beginning. Just don't do anything. So we're all working on it, whether we know it or not. Your kids, your boss, everybody, we're all working on the same thing. It's just some of it are working on it through the suffering. And what I'm talking about is a deliberate suicide mission. So go ahead, Kelsey. Because we're all being shaped, whether we know it or not. You're being shaped. We are being shaped. So you want to intentionally be part of it, or, you know, just watch. Doesn't matter. All right, go ahead, Kelsey. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just thank you for being here today, Mark. I came in, I thought it was going to be a discussion about your presentation the other day. So I was delighted to actually see you here. I appreciate that. And I really enjoyed your discussion the other day. Tancha, thank you for saying what you said, you know, stepping out of the room as a metaphor, or literally that. I won't go into that part now, but that is very helpful to me. What I wanted to touch on, just to actually make a comment, is I realize that in my conditioning, I've always had opinions. You know, I have an opinion about everything. You know, I had children young. I was in charge. I was in charge as in my work. And I've been backing up in the last, I don't know, years, I guess, but even more so in the last year of, you know, like I realize, you know, I'll be with my partner and she'll say, well, what route do you want to take? And I have an opinion. And I've been just backing up, like, I don't really care. And it's been really wonderful to realize that before I thought I had to have an opinion, kind of think it through, analyze it. And now I really don't care about so much. And even I have a big family gathering coming up that would at different points be a different point be stressful. And I find myself just thinking, well, it's going to work out. I'm not planning it. I'm not thinking about it. And I don't care. I mean, I care about them, but I don't, you know, I really feel like your teaching and other teachings, it's just been, I realize what you talk about, that more energy. That's what I feel like. I just don't have to be in charge anymore. And that's, I can't even tell you what that means. Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you. You just once again brought up something else. That's really what this is about. It's about energy. That's the only reason. And again, I would have never realized this unless you just said that, Kelsey. I keep saying, I notice in my life, I keep saying everything is happening because of this. And then they're all saying everything's happening because of this. And you just keep going back and further. But what you just said, it's really just about the energy. You're expending energy to whether you're building yourself, creating yourself, defending yourself, anything that's trying to, let's just say, create yourself. Let's just say that's what building and defending is. You're all trying to create yourself because you don't really exist. You're held together by attention of your thoughts, and all that takes energy. So if you release yourself from that energy, that's freed up to feel these other feelings that you're basically that energy is being transformed, because you're just energy to begin with. So the energy is either constricted, trying to build something, trying to hold something together, or that tension is releasing, like your palm releasing. And these are feelings that we experience as pleasant or uncomfortable because of that thing. Like I said, we're all being funneled down to this last final point, and it's our suffering that teaches us. And so basically everything that you just said that I got from you is just recognizing that suffering or that waste of energy that's always been in their lives, and just spontaneously letting it go as we recognize it. And we become different persons. Like you said, you become less, you become less inclined to spend all your energy on working on your opinions and try to push forth your opinion. And you're realizing that energy is better spent to just, be experienced as it is. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's something I never would have thought about if you didn't bring that up yourself. So thank you, Kelsey.
Anybody else have questions? Or Mark, did you have other things you wanted to share about? We have about 20 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I have anything written down. Well, one thing I wrote down is something funny that I saw is the beginner's course is to, find fault with others. And then the advanced course is to find fault with yourself. And then of course the graduate course is to, the same way you're able to forgive others, you forgive yourself, because you're not perfect. Oh, and again, I do want to say that somebody mentioned something about, being perfect. That is exactly just what everybody has in mind. Everybody, that's the fallacy. That's the flaws that everybody thinks that there is a way. And so all our suffering, all our learning is just learning that all of the ways, there is no one way, because there's infinite perspectives, infinite point of views. So they're all going to be expressed differently. So I think just the thing that I think came up a few times is this feeling of trying to do things right or to do things perfect, but they're being done for us. It's not really us. It's just us being learned and being shaped by nature. That's all any of this is. It's just us being shaped by nature. You're learning things by nature, and then you're making different decisions by nature. You're recognizing things. And now that you're recognizing things, you're spontaneously making different decisions based on an actual discovery, not something that somebody said. So if I have to leave on any point, I'll just leave it on that point that Donna, I'm glad, brought up, that none of this should just be a rule. None of this should just be another practice to follow. It's really just about you recognizing the truths within yourself and living from those truths. That's it. You made a commitment to yourself. Now be true to yourself and live from that commitment, and be there for others, to help others, because that's the only way you're going to help others is by you getting out of the way and being there for others in a way that they're not able to. So you're in a unique position, and it's hard, it's tough, but that's what we're here for each other.
I have just a little inspiration in the last few minutes. See how this lands. In the last few minutes, if each of us just kind of goes in and thinks of where in your own life, you don't have to share anything, where in your own life, in this moment, is there something that's just not quite right? Like, that just isn't, like for me, there's a little bit of a headache. And maybe like I haven't kind of gotten done today what I wanted to get done, kind of just that little discomfort. And that's the place somehow. And it's not to apply something, but it's just, I don't even know exactly where to take that, but I just had that thought, each of us maybe.
Yeah, I'm for that. Yeah, I'm for all of us silently going in collectively and seeing what energies come up for us. Absolutely.
What's a slight or a major feeling mess that there might be a condition within you to want to tidy up or want to slightly build up or defend or fix. Just see where or if there's something kind of smelly or messy, something that creates a little aversion. And then just let it be there. Let it take you over. Let it win.
Yeah, I like that. Let it be there, because that's the thing is the things in our mind, the contents in our mind, they want to move. That's the whole thing is your mind. It wants to move along. All the thoughts you have, even all the repetitive thoughts, all the childhood thoughts, they want to move along. It's us are the greedy ones that keep them there and won't let them go. I used to compare it to a bottle or a bottle of soda. Let's say you take a bottle of soda and you shake it up and it's got all that pressure, and there's all your thoughts, all your feelings, all these thoughts, let's just say, all these movements of your mind. They want to move out of the bottle. They want you to release the cap and it all get out of the bottle. But what we do is we won't let them. The minute it comes up to our surface, we either say, no, I don't want you, or yeah, exactly. And here's another thought to add to that. It wants to move past all these thoughts or all these feelings, uncomfortable feelings, whatever they are. They're just movements. They're just tensions, whatever they are, thoughts, feelings, tensions. They're just movements of energy. They want to move past you. That's what they're doing. They're actually moving past you, but it's us that get fascinated with them and hold them where they are instead of letting them go. Thich Nhat Hanh gave a really good example about that. He said thoughts are like the sediments in apple juice. They're trying to settle to the bottom. That's the direction they're going in. They're trying to go to the bottom, but you keep picking them up and bouncing them up and grabbing them and trying to get rid of them maybe, or push them out of the way or hold on to them. Any kind of interaction is just making more and more, but by themselves, the apple sediments are going to settle. That's what they want to do. That's what they're trying to do. In Dzogchen, they look at your thoughts in your mind as ornaments. I don't look at my mind as our thoughts as bad things that I don't want there, or thoughts as bad things that I want there. They're just ornaments. They're ornaments of the mind that just want to move through. They're just there to be witnessed and left. They're not meant to be avoided, and they're not meant to be pursued. So I think that's a huge thing. Another thing that Dzogchen makes fun of Zen, my other favorite practice, but they make fun of it, saying that Zen is like the thought police. Oh, you had a police. Oh, you had a thought. Get rid of it. Oh, you had a thought. Dzogchen, no, there's none of that. There's a thought. Fine. Just don't follow that. But if you do follow that thought, fine. Just don't follow that thought. But if you do follow that thought, wonderful. Just don't follow that thought. But if you do, no big deal. Just don't follow that thought. And they're talking about that stick man. They're realizing at any point the stick man becomes disassembled. It doesn't matter if 10 pieces came together, 5 pieces, or 2 pieces. It's your tension that's keeping it together. And at any point, you could just let it drift off. So I think that's a huge attitude or perception to look at your thoughts and the content, to don't look at it as your enemy, to don't look at it as something that you don't want. Just look at it as a passing stranger that just wants to pass through. And it's you or the one that's yelling at it and keeping the conversation going. It's just trying to leave you. You're yelling at it, and it's got to stay there for the conversation while you're yelling at it. Or you're trying to say, yes, I agree. And another point, and now you're building it up more and more. But these thoughts, they want to leave. These movements, they want to leave. These feelings, they want to leave. They're passing through us. And it's us that hold on to them and give them the attention that they have to have the power over us. So, all right. Well, I know we're on a time thing. I know.
If anybody feels like it, when they just closed their eyes and kind of came up with a smelly, messy thing, if you want to share it, you could just put it in the chat. No need to, but it just might be kind of interesting. And then Mark, whatever else you wanted to say.
Thank you. No, I think that would be interesting. And I appreciate you providing that opportunity. That's the opportunity. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the practice is done, right here. This is all we got is our minds and our imagination. So this is where it's all happening. I don't have anything else to add. I was just going to say I have a POK thing on July 4th. Hopefully before then I could announce my website will be done, and hopefully maybe even my book will be done. I did finish, like I think Peter or Gary mentioned, or Hannah maybe mentioned, somebody mentioned that the third book is done, but the artist backed out for personal reasons, so I have to get a new cover. But the book is completely done. The website's almost done. It should be done in a couple weeks. That's all I could think. Oh, and a blog. I did a first podcast. So if anybody wants to go to my YouTube site, you could watch the podcast or find it. I don't even know the website. I'll organize myself. By the next meeting, I'll be able to tell you where you can find my website, my podcast. And I think that's it. Those are the only two things, and YouTube site, but I don't have any information now. I don't know any of the links, but I'll see you guys in a couple weeks anyway. So we're wrapping up the one. If Gary or Hannah wants to wrap this up, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And I especially appreciate this because this was my request. I asked for this because after talking with Hannah and somebody else, it just sparked up so many things. I was like, oh my God, I forgot, some of those important things in my life. I would have never remembered if you didn't bring them up. So I feel like this meeting was for me. So thank you.
Awesome. Gary, do you want to close it out? Thank you so much.
Unless Hannah, you have some closing remarks. I just want to reiterate one thing. As I mentioned in the beginning, that Patty and David and the rest of the committee thought it would be a great idea if Mark came back every month to one of the core sessions. So next month is, so July, as he mentioned, July 4th, and then after that, every month, Mark will be appearing at one of the core sessions. So anyway, hey, another great session is all I can say. We've got so much, and everybody's contributions are just so great.
Yeah.
It just gets better and better. I want to thank Mark, of course, and Peter and Hannah and everybody's contribution. And if no one else has any closing remarks, I'll just stop the recording. Anyone? Going once.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Okay, we're good.